Okay, so we've got this fascinating text. It's called the Sefer Yetzirah, which translates to like the Book of Formation. Now, don't worry, this isn't about like rewriting Genesis or anything like that. It's more of a deep dive into how the universe and like we as humans came to be, all from a uniquely Hebrew perspective. We know you're interested in learning more about how this ancient text connects to your faith as a Latter-day Saint. So we'll definitely keep that in mind as we kind of explore it together.
What's really fascinating about the Sepher Yetzirah is that it's thought to be one of the oldest, possibly even the oldest book on Jewish mysticism.
Wow. Yeah, that's putting things in perspective. Makes you wonder what kind of insights we might find in a text this old. Some scholars even attribute it to Rabbi Akiba, a major figure from the 2nd century A.D., Talk about a bridge across centuries of thought.
Absolutely, and the Sepher Yetzirah proposes this really fascinating idea that God created the universe using a code, consisting of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, 10 numbers known as Sephiroth.
So it's saying that language itself holds this kind of divine creative power. That makes the phrase, "In the beginning was the Word," from the Gospel of John, feel even more profound, wouldn't you say?
It really does. And this emphasis on the divine nature of language isn't exclusive to Jewish mysticism either. Think about the power of the word as described in the Book of Mormon. The idea that God speaks and worlds are formed, that his word carries this kind of creative energy. That's a concept Latter-day Saints are very familiar with.
Yeah, it's almost like the Sefer Yetzirah is providing another layer of understanding to those scriptural accounts. Now, the book also breaks down these 22 letters into 3 groups, 3 mothers, 7 doubles, and 12 symbols. I have to admit those names definitely pique my curiosity.
They are intriguing, aren't they? Each group plays a very specific role in this cosmic code. The 3 mothers, Aleph, Mem, and Shin, they represent the fundamental elements air, water, and fire. They're like the building blocks of the universe.
Yeah, that immediately makes me think about the creation accounts in both Genesis and the Book of Abraham. There's a clear resonance there with those foundational forces that God uses to bring about creation.
Exactly. It's as if the Sepher Yetzirah is offering us this mystical lens to examine those familiar scriptural narratives, revealing these deeper layers of symbolism and meaning. And it's not just about abstract concepts either. This book gets surprisingly specific.
That's what really intrigues me. This isn't just some theoretical text. It's connecting these letters and numbers to concrete things, right?
You're absolutely right. The Sepher Yetzirah connects those elements to planets, days of the week, parts of the human body, even directions in space. It's like this giant web, suggesting that everything in existence is interconnected and reflects this divine pattern.
It brings to mind the plan of salvation, this grand tapestry where every thread is kind of woven together, ultimately leading back to God. It's almost like seeing that same concept reflected in this ancient mystical text.
And that connection to a divine blueprint, to a divinely orchestrated plan. It isn't just a passing similarity. It's this core principle that runs through both the Sepher Yetzirah and Latter-day Saint teachings. It prompts us to ask, what does it mean to be part of this grand design? How do our individual lives fit into this larger cosmic narrative?
Okay, now you're really getting me thinking. And you briefly mentioned a supplemental text attached to the Sepher Yetzirah called the 32 Paths of Wisdom. What can you tell us about that?
Well, those paths delve into various levels of spiritual understanding and enlightenment. Imagine it as a map leading us toward unlocking the mysteries of creation and drawing closer to the divine.
Wow, that's a whole other deep dive waiting to happen. But before we get ahead of ourselves, why should a Latter-day Saint, someone deeply rooted in their own faith tradition, care about a centuries-old text like this, steeped in Jewish mysticism?
That's where it gets really interesting. While the Sepher Yetzirah comes from a different tradition, it offers Latter-day Saints this unique opportunity to explore familiar concepts from a new angle, possibly even deepening their understanding of their own beliefs.
So it's like using this ancient lens to magnify and illuminate truths. That's fascinating.
It truly is, and we're just getting started. Think about it this way, we're talking about a text. That speaks of God creating through language, a divine code, elemental forces. These ideas resonate deeply with Latter-day Saints, scriptures, and beliefs.
It's like we're uncovering these hidden echoes, these universal truths that transcend specific religious traditions. It's making me see the connections between these seemingly disparate worlds. It's adding this layer of mystical symbolism that might not be immediately apparent, but speaks to a deeper understanding of the creative process.
Exactly. You know what's really cool about this is that it's not a creation story in the way that you'd find like in mythology or something.
Right.
It's more like a blueprint or like a cosmic instruction manual for how to understand how the universe is structured and how we fit into all of it.
And this cosmic instruction manual is written in of all things numbers, letters, and sounds.
Right.
The text actually calls these basic elements the Sephirim, which literally translates to books. So it's like the Sepher Yetzirah is saying that these are the like original books of reality, holding the code for absolutely everything.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And one of the key things that the Sefer Yetzirah claims is that God engraved the universe into existence using 32 paths of wisdom. And these paths are made up of those Sephirim letters and sounds.
Okay.
And that connection between the physical world that we can experience with our senses and something so far beyond our understanding is what makes this text so fascinating.
Yeah. It's like saying that the universe is built on a language.
Yeah.
A code that we can potentially try to decipher.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of things beyond our grasp, the Sefer Yetzirah introduces these 10 Sephiroths.
Right.
It describes them as ineffable, which basically means beyond human comprehension.
Yeah.
And essentially they're emanations or outpourings of divine energy.
Right.
So think of them like the building blocks of creation.
Yeah.
And each one has its own unique quality.
And to try to give you a sense of how powerful these Sephiroth are, the text uses all this imagery like lightning flashes and burning coals.
Right.
These descriptions that really highlight their dynamic, almost untamable nature.
Okay, so we've got this universe engraved by 32 paths of wisdom, built with numbers, letters, and sounds, powered by these 10 incredible Sephiroth. I mean, this is already mind-blowing, but I got to ask, how does this all connect back to us?
Yeah.
To how we experience the world?
That's where the Hebrew language comes in.
Okay.
The Sepher Yetzirah puts a lot of emphasis on those 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet.
Right.
And it actually sees them as the foundation for everything.
Oh, wow.
What's really fascinating is that in Hebrew, each letter also has a numerical value.
Right.
And the Sepher Yetzirah really uses this to explore the very essence of creation.
So it's like each letter is a key unlocking different levels of meaning and understanding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The text even mentions something called the 231 gates of knowledge that are formed by combining these letters.
Oh, wow.
So it's like this vast network of potential meanings and connections, a structured pathway to knowledge itself.
Now, to try to make sense of it all, the Sepher Yetzirah groups these 22 letters in the 3 categories.
Right.
The 3 mothers, the 7 doubles, and the 12 simples.
Let's start with the 3 mothers.
Okay.
Aleph, Mem, and Shin.
Okay.
And they represent air, water, and fire, respectively.
Right.
You can think of them as the fundamental forces that create balance in the universe.
Okay.
Imagine a scale.
Okay.
Water, silent, and still on one side, fire crackling with energy on the other.
Right.
And then air associated with the spirit is like the tongue of the balance, the force that keeps it all in equilibrium.
So it's not just about the elements themselves.
Yeah.
But the relationship between them.
Exactly.
The interplay that brings harmony.
That's it.
But how does this cosmic balancing act play out in our everyday world?
Well, the Sepher Yetzirah connects the 3 mothers to the year, the human body, and even the process of creation.
Wow.
For example, the year has heat from fire, cold from water, and a temperate state from air. In the human body, fire is associated with the head water, with the belly and air again, as the mediator resides in the chest.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's like these 3 mothers are just woven into the fabric of existence, operating on both this grand cosmic scale and within each of us.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And what's even more fascinating is that the Sepher Yetzirah even suggests like a male and female aspect to this whole arrangement.
Oh, okay.
The order of the letters is different depending on whether it's referring to the male or the female form, implying a subtle difference in how these energies manifest.
Okay, so we've got these 3 mothers as a foundation.
Right.
Now, what about the 7 doubles?
Okay.
Where do they fit into all of this?
So this is where the Sepher Yetzirah dives even deeper into this concept of balance.
Okay.
The 7 doubles, which include letters like Beth, Gimel, and Daleth, represent opposing forces.
Okay.
Life and death, peace and war, wisdom and folly, riches and poverty, grace and indignation, fertility and solitude and power and servitude.
Wow, those are some pretty heavy concepts.
Yeah.
It's like they represent the fundamental tensions that exist not only in the universe, but within each of us too.
You see, These dualities aren't just abstract concepts. They represent these fundamental forces that shape our lives. The push and pull we constantly experience. The Sepher Yetzirah suggests that by understanding these dualities, we can navigate them more skillfully and find a greater sense of balance in our own lives.
So it's not about eliminating one side or the other,
Right.
but finding that equilibrium point
Exactly.
where these forces can coexist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the Sepher Yetzirah goes on to connect these 7 doubles to different locations.
Okay.
You have above and below, east and west, north and south, and then right in the center you have the Palace of Holiness.
Yeah.
It's almost like a cosmic map overlaying these dualities onto the very fabric of the universe.
Okay, so we've got these dualities mapped onto the universe, but how does that relate to us as individuals?
Well, the text takes it even further, connecting the 7 doubles to the planet's days of the week, and even what it calls the gates of the soul, the orifices of perception in humans, like our eyes, ears, and nostrils.
It's like this ancient text is saying that the universe is reflected in our very being, that we're microcosms of the macrocosm.
The Sefer Yetzirah emphasizes the significance of the number 7, stating that God has loved and blessed the number 7 more than all things under heaven.
Okay.
So this reinforces this idea of a structured, divinely ordained universe reflecting the 7 days of creation.
So we've got these cosmic forces playing out in our lives, but where do the 12 symbols come into all of this?
Okay.
They seem a little less, simple than their name suggests.
You're right. There's more to those 12 symbols than meets the eye. They're connected to some pretty fundamental aspects of human experience. Each of these letters, like He, Vau, and Zain, is associated with qualities like sight, hearing, smell, speech, taste, even emotions like anger and mirth, and actions like work and movement.
It's almost like the Sefer Yetzirah is saying these 12 letters are the building blocks of our senses, our emotions, our very way of interacting with the world.
Exactly. And just like the 3 mothers and 7 doubles, the Sepher Yetzirah connects these 12 symbols to the broader cosmos. They correspond to the 12 constellations of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year, and even the 12 organs of the human body.
It's mind-boggling how this ancient text weaves together these seemingly separate realms, the human body, the cycle of the year, the constellations above us.
Yeah.
It's all interconnected.
What I find most fascinating is that the Sepher Yetzirah doesn't shy away from including aspects like sexuality and emotions within this cosmic framework. It suggests that these elements are not separate from the divine order, but rather integral parts of the human experience within a larger interconnected cosmos.
It challenges us to see ourselves as part of something much greater, not just isolated beings disconnected from the universe around us.
Right. And speaking of a greater universe, the Sepher Yetzirah hints at a multidimensional cosmos, one that goes beyond our usual way of thinking. It mentions the 12 directions in space and the arms of the universe, suggesting a reality that's far more complex than we typically imagine.
This is making me think about how limited our perception can be. We tend to think in 3 dimensions, but what if there's so much more we're not even grasping?
It's a humbling thought, isn't it? Now, before we dive too deep into those other dimensions, let's tie this back to the creation aspect we talked about earlier. The Sepher Yetzirah reminds us that all these 22 letters, the mothers, the doubles, the simples, are the tools God used to form and establish all things. It even mentions the name Yah Jehovah Sabaoth, the living Elohim, the God of Israel, as the source of this creative power.
It's like a powerful reminder that these letters are not just abstract symbols, but the very building blocks of existence infused with divine energy.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another fascinating section of the Sepher Yetzirah, the story of the covenant with Abraham.
That's right. The text describes how Abraham received this knowledge about creation and formed a covenant with God. Now, I've always found that part a little mysterious. What's the deeper meaning behind this covenant?
Well, the symbolism is key here. The Sepher Yetzirah describes the covenant as being formed between the 10 fingers and toes.
10 fingers and toes. What's the connection there?
It links the covenant to 2 essential human actions, communication represented by the tongue, and actions symbolized by circumcision. It highlights the practical application of this knowledge, how it's meant to be embodied and lived, not just contemplated.
That's a really interesting interpretation.
Yeah.
So it's not just about receiving this knowledge, but putting it to practice.
Right.
Both through how we communicate and how we act in the world.
Exactly. Now, speaking of putting knowledge into practice, the Sepher Yetzirah gives us a unique framework for spiritual growth through the 32 paths of wisdom we mentioned earlier.
Okay, I'm eager to learn more about these paths. Are they like a map to spiritual enlightenment, a guide to understanding the universe and ourselves?
You could say that each of the 32 paths represents a different level of understanding, a stage in the process of spiritual ascent. It's like climbing a ladder, with each rung offering a broader, more expansive view.
So it's not about reaching a final destination, but about the journey itself, the continuous process of expanding our awareness.
Precisely. Now, rather than going through all 32 paths in detail, let's highlight a few that might particularly resonate with you.
Sounds good to me. Which ones stand out to you?
Well, the first path, known as the admirable or hidden intelligence, is a good place to start. It's described as the ultimate source of all comprehension, the wellspring of wisdom that no created being can fully grasp. It represents the very essence of the divine.
So right from the start, we're dealing with a level of wisdom that's almost beyond our capacity to imagine.
It's about acknowledging the limits of human understanding and recognizing the existence of something far greater than ourselves. Now, how about we jump ahead to the 10th path?
Sure, what makes the 10th path special?
The 10th path is called the resplendent intelligence. It's described as being exalted above all and illuminating all lights. Think of it as the source of true inspiration, the spark of creative insight that transcends ordinary thinking.
Okay, the resplendent intelligence, the source of true inspiration, that actually resonates with me on a personal level as a designer.
Yeah.
I'm constantly seeking that spark of creative insight, that moment when everything clicks and a new idea emerges.
That's a fantastic connection. The Sepher Yetzirah seems to be saying that this creative spark is not just something we cultivate on our own, but something that flows from a much deeper source.
That's really making me rethink my creative process. It's like I'm tapping into a universal wellspring of inspiration every time I sit down to design. Okay, so we've got the first path, the source of ultimate wisdom, and the 10th path, the source of true inspiration. What other paths should we explore?
Let's take a look at the 12th path. It's called the intelligence of transparency, and it's associated with prophecy, with the ability to perceive hidden truths about the future.
That's interesting. It suggests a link between deeper understanding and the ability to see beyond the present moment.
Exactly. And finally, let's touch on the 16th path, known as the triumphal or eternal intelligence.
What can you tell me about that one?
The 16th path represents the culmination of the spiritual journey, the ultimate paradise for those who have achieved true wisdom and righteousness. It's a state of complete bliss and fulfillment, the ultimate reward for a life well lived.
So it's like a vision of what's possible, the highest potential we can achieve through spiritual growth and understanding.
Precisely. Now, these are just 4 of the 32 paths, and each one offers unique insights and challenges. It's worth exploring all of them to get a sense of the full scope of this ladder of spiritual ascent that the Sepher Yetzirah lays out.
I'm definitely feeling inspired to dive deeper into these paths, but before we get lost in all 32, let's take a step back and talk about the symbolism in the Sepher Yetzirah. It seems like every element, from the letters to the numbers to the stories, is loaded with deeper meaning.
You're absolutely right. Symbolism is a key part of understanding the Sefer Yetzirah and Kabbalah in general. It's like a secret language that unlocks hidden levels of meaning within the text.
Okay, so what are some of the key symbols we should be paying attention to?
Well, one that comes to mind is the Tree of Life. While it's not explicitly mentioned in the Sepher Yetzirah, many scholars believe the text alludes to it through the arrangement of the 10 Sephiroth.
So even though the Tree of Life isn't directly named, its structure is woven into the text.
Precisely. The Tree of Life is a visual representation of how divine energy flows into the universe, and the Sepher Yetzirah's description of the Sephiroth aligns perfectly with that concept.
That's fascinating. I'm starting to see how understanding the symbolism of the Tree of Life can give us a deeper appreciation for the Sepher Yetzirah's view of creation and the interconnectedness of everything.
Exactly. Now, beyond the Tree of Life, there are other symbols worth noting. Remember those vivid images used to describe the Sephiroth?
Right, like the lightning flash and the burning coal.
Those images are not just there for dramatic effect. They're symbols that convey deeper meaning. The lightning flash represents the sudden transformative power of the Sephiroth, their ability to illuminate and change things in an instant.
It's like a bolt of inspiration or a sudden realization that shifts our whole perspective.
Exactly. And then there's the burning coal, which symbolizes the Sephiroth's intense energy and life-giving potential. It suggests that creation is an ongoing process fueled by this constant outpouring of divine energy. It's like a fire that never goes out, constantly generating new forms and possibilities.
It makes you appreciate the dynamism of the universe, how everything is constantly changing and evolving.
Now, another symbol that appears in the Sepher Yetzirah is the sphere. It uses this to represent the totality of existence. Remember those 231 gates of knowledge we talked about, the ones formed by combining the Hebrew letters? Well, the text says they're arranged as upon a sphere, and that the sphere can be rotated forward or backward for good or evil.
Wow, that's a powerful image. It suggests that we have a choice in how we use the knowledge we gain, whether we apply it towards creation or destruction.
Exactly. It speaks to the concept of free will and the responsibility that comes with understanding the creative power of language and thought.
It's almost like the Sepher Yetzirah is saying that we're not just passive observers in the universe, but active participants who have a say in how things unfold.
You're getting it. The Sefer Yetzirah is not just a theoretical text, it's a guide for spiritual practice, encouraging us to connect with the divine through meditation, contemplation, and ethical action.
So it's not enough to just intellectually understand these concepts. We have to embody them in our lives.
Absolutely. Now, remember how we talked about the duality of those seven devils? Well, the Sepher Yetzirah specifically mentions how God set good over against evil, implying a balance between these opposing forces.
Right, like how those seven doubles represented both positive and negative qualities. The Sepher Yetzirah seems to be saying that both good and evil have a role to play in the grand scheme of things.
Precisely, it's not about eliminating one side or the other, but recognizing the inherent tension between these forces and striving to find a harmonious balance.
That reminds me of the yin and yang symbol, how opposing forces are actually complementary and necessary for wholeness.
That's a great analogy. The Sepher Yetzirah suggests that this balance between good and evil is crucial not just for individual well-being, but for the harmony of the entire universe.
Okay, so we've explored the 32 paths of wisdom, delved into the symbolism of the tree of life, and touched upon the concept of duality and balance. What other key themes or ideas should we highlight before wrapping up our deep dive into the Sepher Yetzirah?
Well, there's one concept that's central to the Sepher Yetzirah's understanding of creation, the idea of emanation.
Emanation, that sounds familiar, but could you remind me what it means in this context?
Of course, emanation is the idea that the universe unfolds from a single source, like light radiating outwards from a central point.
Right, and the 10 Sephiroths we talked about, those are the stages of this unfolding process, right? They represent the different ways that divine energy manifests in the universe.
Exactly. They're the divine attributes or qualities through which God creates and sustains the universe. It's not like a sudden creation event, but a continuous flow of energy and consciousness that gives rise to all things.
That's such a beautiful way to think about creation. It's not something that happened once in the distant past, but a process that's still happening all around us all the time.
Precisely. And this process of emanation is not just a one-time event. It's an ongoing dynamic process, constantly shaping and reshaping the universe.
It makes you feel like we're part of something much bigger than ourselves, connected to this incredible flow of creative energy.
And that connection is key. The Sepher Yetzirah really emphasizes the interconnectedness of all things, how every action, thought, and intention ripples outwards, influencing the entire web of existence.
That's a powerful thought. It makes you want to be more mindful of your choices, knowing that they have an impact beyond yourself.
Exactly.
This deep dive has certainly sparked my curiosity, and I'm sure our listeners feeling the same way. It's clear that the Sepher Yetzirah is a text that deserves to be studied and contemplated deeply.
Indeed, it's a wellspring of ancient wisdom that continues to resonate with modern seekers.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from the 32 paths of wisdom to the symbolism of the tree of life, and explored key themes like emanation, duality, and interconnectedness.
We've also touched upon the Sepher Yetzirah's approach to spiritual practice, emphasizing meditation, contemplation, and ethical action.
It's been a fascinating journey into the heart of Kabbalah.
And remember, this is just the beginning. The Sepher Yetzirah is a text that rewards repeated study and reflection. Each time you return to it, you're likely to uncover new layers of meaning and insight. And that, I believe, is the beauty of the Sepher Yetzirah. It sparks a thirst for knowledge, a desire to delve deeper into the mysteries of creation and consciousness.
Well, this deep dive has certainly quenched my thirst for knowledge about the Sepher Yetzirah. It's an incredibly rich and complex text, but also surprisingly accessible and relevant to our lives today.
I agree. And as we conclude our exploration for today, I want to leave you with a ponder the special. Sepher Yetzirah suggests that the universe is not static, but rather in a constant state of flux shaped by the interplay of divine emanations and human actions.
So we're not just passive observers, but active participants in the ongoing process of creation.
Exactly. And if language, as the Sepher Yetzirah suggests, is the tool through which God created the universe, then our words and thoughts hold immense power.
That's a fantastic point. We often underestimate the power of our words and intentions. If the Sepher Yetzirah is right, then every syllable we utter, every thought we form participates in shaping the reality around us.
What's especially intriguing is how this connects with the text's emphasis on ethical action. It's not enough to simply understand the principles of creation. We're called to apply them responsibly, using our knowledge to foster good and counterbalance evil in the world.
So it's a call to conscious creation, to becoming mindful stewards of the power we wield through language and thought. It makes you think twice about complaining about the traffic, huh?
It really does. The Sepher Yetzirah reminds us that we're not separate from that divine flow of creation, but active participants in it. Our choices, our actions, even our unspoken intentions all contribute to the tapestry of existence.
I'm starting to see the world around me, even my own thoughts, in a whole new light after this deep dive. It's like realizing you've had superpowers all along but never knew how to use them.
That's the beauty of engaging with these ancient wisdom traditions. They offer a timeless lens through which we can re-examine our assumptions and discover profound insights into the nature of reality and our place within it. They challenge us to step outside our everyday thinking and consider new possibilities.
This deep dive into the Sepher Yetzirah has been an incredible journey. It's opened up new ways of thinking about the universe, the power of language, and our role in the unfolding of creation. It's definitely made me rethink how I use my words and how I approach my creative process.
I'm so glad you found it valuable. And remember, the insights we've discussed are just a glimpse into the vast ocean of wisdom contained within Kabbalah. There's a whole universe of knowledge waiting to be explored.
It's definitely left me wanting to dive deeper to explore the Zohar and other Kabbalistic texts you mentioned. Who knows what other secrets and insights we might uncover?
I have a feeling we'll be revisiting this world again soon. Until then, may your exploration be filled with wonder and illumination.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Sepher Yetzirah. May the insights we've shared spark your own journey of discovery and transformation. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.